Testing, testing.
Good morning and welcome to the Commission's administrative meeting for December 21st, 2022, our last meeting of the year. And as is customary, I would just like to thank our staff for all of the hard work and diligence. This is traditionally a busy meeting. We have 17 buck sheets before us today. Looking back over all the accomplishments of the past year, I know myself and my colleagues are very appreciative of all the hard work that all of our staff have done to move utility regulation, transportation regulation in this state forward. With every passing year, we have additional unfunded mandates and additional portfolio responsibilities from labor, climate, and the environment. And our staff continues to work with the resources they have to get the job done. So on behalf of the Commission, thank you to our terrific staff here. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Chairman, just of note, today is the winter solstice, and at approximately 1647 this afternoon, we will officially go into winter, if not calendar winter, certainly the real winter. But today is the shortest daylight hour of the day, and you'll be glad to know you'll get an extra 30 seconds of daylight starting tomorrow.
Enjoy the remaining hours of autumn in that case. We have meeting minutes to approve from our last meeting on December 14th. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Meeting minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. There are 4 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is a request from Centrica Business Solutions Optimize LLC to withdraw its license as a curtailment service provider. Item number 2 is a notice from Fusion Communications LLC of withdrawal of its operating authority and tariffs. Item number 3 is a notice from Exchange Telecom LLC and Nova Infrastructure Capital Advisors LLC of transfer of control. And item number 4 is a request from Maryland Solar LLC and Aravon Energy to replace their surety bond.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, I would move that with respect to item number 1, that we approve the cancellation request. With respect to item number 2, that we rescind the company's authority to operate in Maryland and cancel its tariffs. With respect to item number 3, that we note the transfer of control. And with respect to item number 4, that we approve the replacement of the current bond with the new bond for the purpose of the decommissioning plan in case number 9272 and execute a release letter of the current bond to Intact Insurance Surety Group. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motions are approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 5 on the administrative agenda is a request from Chesapeake Utilities Corporation of approval of a series corrector or pressure recorder.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Spiegelman.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Michael Spiegelman on behalf of staff. This item concerns a request by Chesapeake Utilities Corporation which was filed on October 20, 2022. The request seeks approval of an Eagle MP Plus second series volume corrector pressure recorder manufactured by Eagle Research Corporation for gas measurement equipment applications. Comar 20550502B states, before any pressure or temperature device may be used for the purpose of correcting the registration of a meter, the type and design of the device or devices shall be approved by the Commission. Also, Comar 20550202B6 states that each utility or gas master meter operator shall use as accepted good engineering practice the applicable provision in an American National Standard for rotary type gas displacement meter which is incorporated by reference. In the present filing, Chesapeake has provided documentation that this volume corrector pressure recorder has been tested and conformed to all applicable ANSI standards, underwritten lab standards for control equipment. Also, this product received Canadian Standard Association certification class 225882 for process control equipment for hazardous location certified to US standards. In addition, the prior model of this volume corrector pressure recorder, the MP Plus, was previously approved by Maryland Public Service Commission. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission approve the MP Plus second series volume corrector pressure recorder manufactured by Eagle Research Corporation for industrial and commercial applications. If approved, staff will update the list of approved devices located on ESC website. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegelman, Mr. Davis. Mr. Quinn, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Brian Quinn on behalf of Chesapeake. Thanks, engineering staff, for that buck sheet, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Spiegelman, do these new volume corrector pressure recorders act as a regulator? In other words, the volume corrector descriptor makes me think it's a regulator.
Yes, I think so.
It is. Okay. So are these measuring devices and regulators located inside of the building or outside of the building?
My understanding that they can be installed inside or outside as well. They have weatherproof enclosure.
If they're located inside the building, do they have a vent line that goes outside the building when they're relieving pressure?
Perhaps company can answer that.
Maybe the company can help me
Yep.
with that.
Commissioner O'Donnell, I have Rick Wunsch from the company. Sorry if I butchered your last name. He's the manager of operations and can answer those questions.
Yes, sir. These devices are not meant for regulating gas pressure, strictly simply calculating pressure and temperature accurately for the customer. No pressure regulation whatsoever.
Okay, what is the volume corrector portion of the descriptor then? Because I think that's what caught my eye.
Okay, it's taking consideration the pressure and the temperature using coefficients built into the CPU unit to accurately bill a customer.
But it's not correcting any volume of gas.
Yes, that's what it's using.
It is correcting
Yes.
volume of gas. Well, that's what a regulator does. It corrects the volume to maintain the pressure.
Just for billing purposes, not so much pressure or volume.
I guess that's what's confusing me. Maybe I have to learn a little bit more. Maybe I can get a tutorial from our engineering department at some point on how these things actually work. I noticed that, I'm sorry.
I have Howard Brumbaugh from WGS. He's the representative from Eagle. If you'd like to speak to him as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I just thought I could clarify that maybe. A flow meter, we put these volume correctors on top of a flow meter to become the cash register for billing a customer. And the meter is measuring gas in actual cubic feet. You put the volume corrector on top, it has a pressure transducer, temperature transducer, so therefore it applies the pressure and temperature factors to go then from actual cubic feet to standard cubic feet. And that's what we say, it's a volumetric corrector.
So in my mind, one of these things is operating and it's going to a customer. Customer turns on a large gas load. It's going to drag the pressure down. This thing's going to pump the pressure back up, just like a regulator does. No.
It has no effect on the pressure, it's just monitoring the pressure, it's just measuring the pressure for billing purposes.
Well, is it going to pump the volume back up to compensate for the usage at the other end, at the user end?
No, sir, it does not.
Okay, so where is that regulation done?
It's a regulator on the industrial meter set or commercial meter set. It has nothing.
So it's a WGL's meter,
I'm sorry.
WGL's regulator.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, that helps. That helps clarify because I didn't know what this thing was doing, and I hate to belabor it, Mr. Chairman, but I needed to understand it a little bit. One last question. These things are replacing what it says are Mercury Instruments. Is that a brand name or is that are these
Yes, sir.
Mercury regulator instruments?
No, sir. That is a brand name, Mercury Instruments.
Okay.
Now it's been bought up by Honeywell.
We've had a little experience with Mercury regulators and
Not good ones.
some utilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no additional questions, I would move that we approve the MP+2 corrector pressure recorder. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 6 is a request for waiver of an operational deadline from Standard Solar Inc. and Cleese Mill Solar LLC.
Good morning, Ms. Garofalo.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Annette Garofalo on behalf of Commission staff.
The Clees Mill Community Solar Project was acquired from Ogos Energy LLC in June 2021, and you may remember that they have been before you in the past. The project was awarded capacity in the second year of the Community Solar Pilot Project under the low to moderate income category, and is located in the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company's service territory. At this point, applicant has ordered and received most equipment needed to construct the project. However, applicant has been unable to secure the necessary approvals required by Carroll County for successful submission of the site plan necessary as a condition precedent to construction of the community solar electricity generating station. In fact, although applicant has received concept approval for the project, from the Planning Commission, the concept plan has not been submitted to the Planning Commission. Under Comar 20-620104, the Commission may waive a regulation in Subtitle 62 for good cause shown. This regulation establishes the deadlines for construction of a community solar generating plant. Page 4 of applicant's letter shows the almost monthly submissions and responses made by applicant to the county's Technical Review Committee, which were met with responsive comments, which, according to applicant, dealt mainly with stormwater management. Applicant anticipates submission of a final site plan on December 31, 2022, with final approval on May 16, 2023. Permits would be issued, according to applicant, in mid-September 2023, with operational completion in March of 2024. Staff recommends the Commission grant the waiver requested by applicant and extend the operational deadline for Standard Solar, Inc. and Clees Mill Solar, LLC to March 31, 2024.
Thank you. We turn to council for the requesting party.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. David Bugelmans on behalf of Standard Solar, Inc. Also have with me today Mr. George Wogelmuth, the Director of Development for Standard Solar. The only additional point I would like to add to staff's summary is the project did receive its final conceptual stormwater management plan approval last week. So that puts it on track to meet the other projected dates for permitting as listed in our filing for expected mobilization for construction in September of next year. Other than that, we're here to answer any questions, and we appreciate your consideration this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. Ms. Garofalo, the buck sheet says this project was awarded capacity in the second year of the CSEG's program. When was that?
I believe that was 2018.
2018. So this thing's been on the books, and it's been on the books for 4 years. It's going to go 5 years plus if we approve this, right?
Yes, just a little history. I'm doing this from my memory, but I think while it was owned by Ogos, the project may have gotten 2 extensions. This is the first extension that the new owner has requested, and if you look at page 4 of their application, you can see that they have been very busy, but not successful until apparently last week, getting their county permits, which are the stage 1.
So does each owner or subsequent owner get a certain number of mulligans?
I think Mr. I think the applicant could answer that better than I.
I'm going to go over there.
We don't have that in our regs, for sure.
Mr. Bugelmans. Says the applicant has received concept approval for the project from the Planning Commission. However, the concept plan has not been submitted to the Planning Commission. Why not?
So I think this is just because of the timing of when we submitted this filing, but it has been submitted, and as I said in my initial comments, it has been approved. So the next step is the project needs to submit the final site plan to the county for approval. That's expected in the next few weeks. But the project has been advancing. The stormwater permitting, it's just taken many revisions and back and forth effectively with the county to be able to get to the point where it can be approved.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll be voting no on this. This is going to be a 5-year-old project, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a request for further extension. These projects are not getting done. State policy is they get done, and I think there's a perception out there, we'll just go in for another delay if we need one, and then we see a constant stream of waivers and delays and extensions, and this commissioner's had enough of it.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Bugelmans. So the staff has directed us a couple of times to page 4, where you've, in bullet point, listed some of your activity since acquiring this project. I don't believe we have a representative of the county here, so I have to ask you. A couple of times in your bulleted list here, you note that you received additional comments to address or something along those lines. You've submitted something on now 6 times now since you've done something very recently. I guess I'm curious, some of the comments that you received on your 4th and 3rd submissions, were you seeing that in the first submissions as well and the company just didn't respond to them? Or are you submitting something and then you're getting a different response, and so help me to understand what the interactions have been like.
Sure. For that, I'll pass it on to Mr. Wogelmuth.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, so some of the submissions were repeat items that we were not able to address, but on other occasions they were asking for more information that we would have to go out and do further studies on the project, on the land itself. So that explains the repeat submissions and comments from the county.
So were these studies that they asked you to complete in the first submission and the company just didn't do it, or was it that you submitted information that they asked for and then they asked for more information?
Yeah, so upon the county's further review of our plans, they determined that there were additional stormwater impacts that would require further studies.
Okay. Did the county participate in those studies? Did they suggest that they had a suspicion that there was more information they needed, or was it that they were relying on the company to do that work?
So, yeah, so they would ask for more information, and which we would have to go out and do on-site work to do. So in order to get an answer to the county, we would have to go and do more work on-site.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's
you.
all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Biegelman, since we don't have a representative of Carroll County here, are the delays that are being experienced by this project out of the norm in your experience, since you represent a number of these developers, and have they provided a reason for their response time?
So it's not unusual, Your Honor, for there to be multiple rounds of comments on stormwater management plans and those kinds of technical approvals. Site plans and landscape plans or other things where you often see some back and forth. But I think the amount and scope of comments for this one has been unusual, and I think it exceeded the project expectations in terms of the amount of time it took to finish that back and forth and get to the approval of the plan.
Thank you for documenting the timeline that you did. That is persuasive for me that the company has been diligent in working with the county, responding multiple, 4th, 5th, 6th times. I would move that we grant the applicant's requested waiver and extend the operational deadline from December 30th, 2022 to March 31st, 2024. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to explain my vote. I don't want anyone to mischaracterize my position as not wanting these projects to get done. In fact, it's just the opposite. I wish them to get done expeditiously. Some of this capacity was issued in 2017, and this instant case was issued in 2018, and that capacity is wasted in not furthering the aims of state policy goals. And we see a never-endless stream of these, hence my misappropriation of the golfing term. How many mulligans do these developments get? Because very few of them are online. And this program is now very mature. It's 5 years old. This project, if you measured from the beginning, not when it was issued, but from the beginning of this program, be 6 years into the program. And we continue to see a never-ending stream of these extensions. And at some point, we got to put our foot down and say, no. I vote no.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye by a motion of 4 to 1. By a vote of 4 to 1, the motion carries and is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 7 is an application from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company for authorization to issue long-term debt.
Good morning, Mr. Delgado.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Eric Delgado on behalf of staff. On October 28, 2022, the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, BGE, filed an application for the authorization to issue long-term debt up to a principal amount of $1.8 billion. If approved, BGE will use proceeds upon the sale of debt for general corporate purposes to refund short-term debt incurred to finance utility construction and operations on a temporary basis, to fund ongoing capital requirements of the company, and to discharge or lawfully refund the company's obligations as they come due. The $1.8 billion would become debt on the shelf, available to be used along with the company's other principal sources of funds to finance its capital spending program over the 2023 to 2026 period, which BGE estimates in its budget would require $5 billion in addition to the $900 million for the retirement, redemption, or repurchase of debt. The debt may be issued in one or more series and will have maturities between 12 months to 30 years from the date of issuance. The first issuance is expected in 2023. Staff has reviewed the company's application and finds it compliant with the provisions set out in COMAR 2007-0402 and the Public Utilities Articles 6-101 and 6-102. In regards to BGE's capital structure, BGE targets an equity ratio of 52% and anticipates this ratio to remain fairly consistent with the requested authorization. In compliance with Commission Order Number 82986 and Case Number 9173, BGE reports its quarterly long-term debt to equity ratio to the Commission. Since 2017, BGE has maintained an equity ratio between 50 and 54%. Staff recommends that the Commission grant the application and issue a final order in compliance with COMAR 2007-0402C, authorizing BGE to issue up to $1.8 billion of long-term debt. And thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. We'll turn to counsel for the utility. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Beverly Sikora on behalf of BGE. Today I also have with me David Vahos, I almost call him our Chief Executive Officer. I don't think he's ready for that promotion. Our Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer. I also have John Frayne with me, who you're all very familiar with, our Director of Pricing and Tariffs. No comments except to say that we do appreciate staff's diligent effort on this and their speed in getting their review done. I know this is a very busy time of year for them, so we definitely appreciate their diligence and their effort in it. And we're here for any questions you might have for us.
Thank you, Ms. Socorro. We had a very similar request of your fellow sister utility last week on another long-term debt shelf. Do my colleagues have questions? Commissioner Bubar.
Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, I think I asked this question last week too. Can you just describe what factors were considered on the timing of acquiring the debt, given what's happening with interest rates?
I'm going to let Mr. Vahos take that one because he needs some practice before our next rate case, so this will be good for him.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Glad to be here today. Appreciate the time. With respect to the size of the shelf, the $1.8 billion, we look at our forward-looking plan. We look at what debt maturities that we see because we know when they're going to mature, and then we look at our funding needs, and that's how we size the request before you today. Is we need about $1.8 billion of capacity between 23 and 26 to access the capital markets.
And do you consider what's happening with interest rates in terms of when, or is it irrelevant because you need it?
We will consider interest rates more in the sense of the duration of the instrument. So if the shorter end of the curve, like a 10-year debt life, is going to be cheaper than a 30-year instrument, we'll use that to kind of manage interest rate risk. But when we get to the point where we need to go to the market, typically when I'm riding around $400 million of commercial paper or short-term borrowings, I'm going to go out and issue debt in the long-term market. So our real toggle is whether it's shorter or longer in duration, looking at the interest rate at times.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning.
Morning.
Glad to see you getting some practice.
Yeah.
Just a very quick question regarding this particular request. Just wanted to confirm that the company would take the opportunity to use this to try and meet some of its PC 52 supplier diversity goals.
Always. Commissioner, always.
Good. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, I would move that we authorize the company to issue up to $1.8 billion of long-term debt. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 8 consists of revised tariff pages from the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative.
Mr. Delgado, once again.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Eric Delgado on behalf of staff. On November 28th, 2022, the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative filed tariff revisions to reflect the true-up of its Rider G rate. Rider G provides SMECO customers the opportunity to source their load from 100% renewable energy. SMECO achieves this by purchasing renewable energy credits above the number of RECs required to meet Maryland's renewable energy portfolio standard. The result of the true-up will increase the Rider G rate from $0.1213 per kilowatt hour to $0.0220 per kilowatt hour. The increase in the Rider G rate is primarily due to the increase in the estimated purchase price of Maryland Tier 1 RECs for 2023. The estimated Tier 1 REC purchase price for 2023 is $25.94 per megawatt hour, which is a 44.75% increase from the estimated Tier 1 REC purchase price in 2022. Since SMECO uses estimated purchase price of Tier 1 RECs to set the Rider G rate, SMECO has under-recovered its costs for 2022. The estimated price of Tier 1 RECs for 2022 was $17.92 per megawatt hour. However, SMECO purchased Tier 1 RECs in 2 tranches at $26.5 per Tier 1 REC and $28 per Tier 1 REC. This resulted in an under-recovery of $6,012.08. Thus, SMECO is incorporating a cost recovery mechanism in the Rider G rate to recover its costs. SMECO customers enrolled in the Rider G rate can expect an average increase of $10.19 in their monthly bills in 2023. Staff recommends that the Commission accepts for filing the proposed Rider G rate for an effective date of January 1, 2023. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. We'll turn to counsel for the cooperative.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Mark McDougall on behalf of SMECO. With me today is also Eugene Bradford, SMECO's Vice President of Rates and Energy Procurement. We have no additional comments and are available for questions.
Thank you. We'll start with Commissioner questioning. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McDougall, when you were in here for the last adjustment, I asked you a question about what your customer service folks tell folks when they call in and complain about their rates going up. And you said you hope they weren't saying that it's the Public Service Commission's fault, but you would check on that as soon as you left and got back down the road. Did you check on that?
I did check on that, and I found no instance where, and it was not reported to me any instance where our customer service folks made that statement. I did, as I promised, talk with the heads of our customer service area, and impressed upon them the importance of saying that it is SMECO's request that our rates are increased or decreased over the period of time. The Commission reviews the request and makes a determination based upon the public interest. So I did as I had promised.
Very good. If I hear any instance of that, since I'm the resident commissioner in the cooperative service territory, I will let the cooperative know.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. You can reach out to me or anybody else in the company that you would like.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bubar?
Thank you. I just have a couple questions. I think your responses noted that 95 customers have chosen the G rate. Can you just remind me how many customers in total?
We have approximately 170,000 customers of all sorts, mostly residential, but commercial and some industrial.
Thank you. And the rate increase, I think, is $10.19 with this for customers on the G rate, which seems quite steep, but presumably that's the value proposition that these customers are looking for.
Well, we are not happy with the increase, but just like all energy products, we're finding that the price of renewable energy credits has increased over the course of the last year or so, and I mean it's one of those things that is what it is.
When customers are made aware of this rate increase, what's the process if they say, that's just too much, I want to get off of that rate?
They can call at any time to our customer service area and drop off of the Rider G and go back to standard offer service.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Richard?
Yeah, I had a similar question about just the number of participants. I know that there are certain restrictions placed on you on how you can, you can't use the word promote, but let customers know about this. How do you go about, how does the co-op let customers know about this opportunity to enhance their renewable purchases?
Well, you're entirely right. We are prohibited by COMAR from marketing or promoting the standard offer service, and we've characterize Rider G as falling into that category, but we do provide unbiased information in terms of the availability of Rider G and the terms by which it is offered. We don't do that so often as to lead someone to think that we are promoting it or marketing it, but we will upon occasion put something in our publication called the Cooperative Review, which goes out every month. We might have a line on the bill. We might put something on our social media sites, but it's not regular that we do that. But it's enough, we hope, to drive some interest to this product if a customer wants it.
All right, good to hear. And then just as far as right now, you go about I guess achieving the product with RECs, is that correct?
That is correct.
Has there been any consideration to a power purchase agreement or any kind of, or is it within the ability to provide members access to, I guess, specific projects?
Not for Rider G, Commissioner Richard. The tariff as it was proposed by SMECO and as it was approved by the Commission really focuses on the RECs, and therefore that's the way we provide it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if there'd be additional interest if people could actually, at least be, informed about a specific project or where that power might be coming from. So, anyway, that's all the questions. Thank you very much for being here today.
Why, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Later in the agenda, we're going to have an Empower surcharge item for the cooperative. And as I read the buck sheet on that, the increase in the 2023 billing cycle starting January 21st will be $9.73 per month for a residential customer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so it's additive to this tariff G, Schedule G class tariff increase as well, right? So it's going to be about $20 a month.
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. That's a lot of money.
That's correct as well.
I would move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of January 1st, 2023. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 9 is the annual electric distribution investment surcharge report for 2022 and associated tariff revisions from the Potomac Edison Company.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Lowe.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Christopher Lowe on behalf of staff. This item is the fourth annual report and tariff filed by the Potomac Edison Company for its Electric Distribution Investment Surcharge, EDIS. Under the Public Utilities Article Section 4-202, the electric company tariff is to include its rates and charges, terms and conditions, policies and practices, and providing regulated services. In order number 89072, case number 9490, the Commission approved a surcharge to recover costs of reliability improvements regarding distribution automation schemes, reclosers, and underground cable replacement. The 2022 work reported in this filing includes installation of 2 DA schemes, replacements of 8 reclosers, and approximately 30 miles of underground cable. As discussed in staff's comments, the overall EDIS cost estimates for 2022 has increased 14.7% from the original cost estimates proposed by the company in this 2021 EDIS filing. Staff notes that the material shortage as well as labor engineering costs increase largely contributed to the cost variance for this EDIS programs. Staff also reviews the 2023 proposed work, cost estimates, and the calculation of the surcharges for different customer classes, and determined that they were correctly calculated. With all the proposed changes in 2023 EDIS charge, an average residential customer using 1,000 kilowatt hour a month would have a bill increase of $0.035, or a 0.4% increase as compared to the 2022 EDIS charge. Staff recommends that the Commission notes the Potomac Edison 2022 EDIS report, and staff also recommends that the Commission accept for filing the Potomac Edison tariff with an effective date of January 1st, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe, and to your team. Counsel for the utility.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Jeffrey Trout on behalf of the Potomac Edison Company. We appreciate staff's analyses. We concur in their recommendations, and I am here to attempt to answer any questions you have, and if I can't answer them, I do have backup available to me this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. Thank you, Christopher and staff. Thank you. So several of us went up to Potomac Edison and did a visit. So we actually went through some of these issues, and that was extremely helpful as I was reading the buck sheet. So I really appreciate that. Just a couple questions. Are the 8 reclosers on track to be installed by the end of this calendar year, which is about a week from now?
I believe they are. I'm going to phone a friend. Hang on a moment. I got a nod.
Okay, thank you. And just explain your confidence level of the estimate for the remaining 6 reclosers to be installed, or I guess to be shipped and installed by the end of, or I think in calendar year 2023.
So the supply chain issues evolve from day to day. I looked at a report on that this morning, and there continue to be jags up and down, but the bottom line was we're still confident.
I know you were tracking it, and as they explained to us, just trying to come up with all kinds of other ways to solve the problem too. So, all right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, I would move that we note the company's 2022 annual electric distribution investment surcharge report and accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of January 1st, 2023. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, items 10 through 16 are various Empower Maryland related tariff revisions from Delmarva Power and Light Company, Potomac Electric Power Company, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company for gas customers, Baltimore BGE for electric customers, Washington Gas Light Company, Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, and the Potomac Edison Company.
Thank you. The utilities can remain seated. Office of People's Counsel can take the podium. Good morning, Ms. Shaw.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Paige Shaw on behalf of staff. Items 10 through 16 represent filings from the Delmarva Power and Light Company, Potomac Electric Power Company, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, Washington Gas Light Company. Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative and Potomac Edison Company's proposed updates to their Empower Maryland surcharges for 2023. Before we continue, staff would like to note that staff's comments for DPL and PEPCO had previous drafts posted to the Commission's website that has since been corrected this morning. For DPL, staff changed Table 1, the monthly bill impact, to 1,004 kilowatt hours for an average DPL customer, down from 1,018 kilowatt hours. And for PEPCO, in Table 2, staff had to correct the numbers in the second column, costs recovered in fiscal year 23 surcharge, and the total numbers in Table 3 due to transcribing errors. None of these updates had an impact on staff's recommendation or on the calculation of the surcharges. Moving on, staff has reviewed the filings and notes that the proposed costs in 2023 are very similar to the cost proposed in the company's 2021 to 2023 Empower Maryland program filings. Staff would also like to mention that in the fall semi-annual hearing, the Commission inquired about if expensing costs for the behavior program and utility administrative costs had any effect on funding the Empower programs. Staff has not noticed any impacts to the Maryland program funding based on those changes. As noted in our written comments, staff recommends the Commission accept for filing the proposed charges with the effective date stated in the company's tariffs. Additionally, the Office of People's Counsel filed comments on December 19th, 2022, recommending the Commission deny PE's requested surcharge update and require PE to file revised surcharge based on DPL surcharge calculation methodology. And with that, staff is available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. As you just noted, we have Office of People's Counsel with us.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Nicole Zeitner on behalf of the Maryland Office of People's Counsel. Respectfully, Potomac Edison's proposed Empower surcharge is not just and reasonable, and it should not be approved. Potomac Edison's amortization method for Empower cost is expected to cost its ratepayers $1.4 million more in 2023 than it would if it followed the methodology used by Delmarva and PEPCO. And additionally, this would cost millions over the course of many years. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, you're very familiar with the amortization, the costs that are amortized through the Empower program. There are amortizable program costs which are recovered over 5 years, and non-amortizable or expense costs which are recovered over a single year. Last year, this commission ordered the utilities to begin expensing costs for behavior programs and program administration. The Empower Maryland utilities earn a return on the unamortized balance of Empower program costs each year at their pre-tax weighted average cost of capital. The unamortized program costs for Empower, which totaled $822 million at the start of 2020, are of particular concern to both the Commission and OPC. And the Commission is, as you know, currently considering a payoff plan for the unamortized balance. Potomac Edison's amortization method for Empower costs is distinct from that of all of the other Empower Maryland utilities, in that program costs are not amortized until the subsequent January of the year after the costs are incurred. Because the Empower Maryland utilities currently earn a rate of return on the unamortized balance, Potomac Edison's delayed amortization methodology is causing an increased rate of return and increased cost to its ratepayers. The effect that Potomac Edison's amortization method has on its ratepayers is compounded by the fact that it does not take into account deferred taxes when calculating the unamortized balance, and it weights the yearly amortization by monthly sales instead of by the more standard one-month approach. The effect of this amortization method is illustrated in both Figure A and Table A in OPC's filed comments, where we modeled a scenario using a set cost across each Empower Maryland utility. Potomac Edison's estimated return was the highest, followed by PEPCO and Delmarva, BGE, and then Washington Gas based on their respective amortization methods. There's simply no reason for Potomac Edison's customers to pay more due to its choice of amortization method. Potomac Edison explained in a data response to OPC that it has followed the amortization method that was originally approved by the Commission in 2009, but this is an insufficient justification for the ratepayer impact resulting from its choice. OPC would need additional time to evaluate which amortization method results in a just and reasonable surcharge amount. In the interim, we respectfully request that the Commission order Potomac Edison to adopt PEPCO and Delmarva's amortization method for 2023. Additionally, our analysis revealed that there are differences in the pre-tax rate that the Empower Maryland utilities use to calculate their returns. We respectfully recommend that the Commission consider initiating a rulemaking to establish a uniform and transparent amortization method for all of the power utilities that will minimize costs to ratepayers. Our recommendation to this commission last week on Delmarva's request for the issuance of debt securities, where we asked the commission to establish standards for debt issuances, should have been limited to that particular case. Recognizing this, we're asking the commission to consider a rulemaking to address this issue on a larger scale, but in this particular case, we are respectfully requesting that Delmarva Potomac Edison's methodology not be allowed to continue for 2023, and that they follow Delmarva and Pepco's methodology, which, as we can see, results in the second highest rate of returns. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Eichner. This is what we'll do. We'll have Potomac Edison's counsel have the opportunity to respond, and then if any utilities wish to respond to staff on items 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, or 15, they'll have the opportunity to do so. Mr. Trout, would you like to respond to Ms. Eichner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would. And I'm sure no one is surprised by that. So we saw OPC's proposed methodology change at noon on Monday. And we've looked it over and we've done some back of the envelope calculations. And I have 3 responses, and then I have a recommendation. My 3 responses are as follows. Number 1, we are doing what we are doing and what we have been doing without any question at any point over the last 13 years before noon this Monday. And amidst all of the discussions that we've had for months and years about the subject of amortization, because it is what the Commission ordered us to do from the outset of this program. Their reasoning was simple and straightforward. They wanted the calculations done for each year based the maximum extent possible on actuals, which required us to begin the amortization in the following year rather than doing it month by month during the pending year. That was the choice that the we discussed a number of different approaches to this back in 2008 and 2009. This is what the Commission, after due consideration, directed us to do. We have done it without question or change from then until now. So my first point is that we should not, on the fly, change something that was done for a good reason and has been done that way for 13 years based on a filing that came out of the blue at noon this Monday. My second response is that OPC characterizes their request as one to save ratepayers money. But respectfully, it does exactly the opposite. OPC's recommendation is that we accelerate the amortization of the deferred balance for 2023 into 2023. We have not completed, and it would take a little time to complete, a thorough analysis of what that would entail, but our back-of-the-envelope math is that it would require us to collect approximately $10 million more in 2023 than we are currently asking you to give us because of the accelerated recovery of the deferred balance. And of course that would be based on estimates. It would not be based on year-end balances the way our methodology and the Commission approved methodology currently does it. In return for us recovering more money quicker, OPC is correct that the amortization on the deferred balances would be lower. Our and again, this is back of the envelope, but our back of the envelope math suggests that the savings in return to customers would be in the range of just under $500,000. So customers would pay $10 million more in 2023 if you grant OPC's request in order to save less than $500,000 in what amounts to interest expense. That is a bargain that we can implement if you direct us to, and it's your judgment as to whether that's a good bargain or a bad bargain. But make no mistake, customers will pay more, substantially more, in 2023 if you grant this out of the blue request that OPC is making. My third point is with respect to the subsidiary issues that OPC has raised, and I suppose it's a point 3A and a point 3B. Now, I apologize for having 4 instead of 3. But the main one that I wanted to make is with respect to deferred taxes, and there OPC is just plain wrong. We are recovering and accounting for deferred taxes in our base rates. If we were to account for them in the surcharge, we would be double dipping. So OPC's analysis there is flawed and incomplete, and is perhaps a reflection of the hurry with which they assembled this filing, but at any rate, they're wrong. We are accounting for deferred taxes. We are doing it in base rates, and no change should be made there. The 3B point was there was an argument about a monthly approach and doing the monthly approach differently. That is very small potatoes, and we could do that, but it's not going to materially change the outcome. The material points for you are OPC's wrong about the deferred taxes, and they would be doing a double recovery with respect to that. That what we're doing was done explicitly at the Commission's direction after reviewing all the different approaches to this. We've been doing it for 13 years, and it wasn't done to pump up the returns. It was done to make sure that each year you would be recovering based on actuals to the maximum extent possible rather than estimated charges. And last but most importantly, if you grant OPC's motion, you will substantially increase the Empower surcharge for Potomac Edison's customers, not decrease it. So my recommendation to the Commission is that you deny without prejudice OPC's request and the issues that OPC raises, that you grant our requested tariff change in accordance with staff's recommendation, and that this entire issue of how amortization should be calculated and handled going forward be deferred to next year when we have to deal with the much larger issue of how we're going to retire all the amortized amounts for all of the utilities starting in 2024. That's the time to look at this issue afresh with the new rubric that the Commission wants us to adopt beginning in 2024 of retiring all of these amounts as soon as reasonably possible. That's the time to consider the points that OPC is raising and that I respectfully suggest they've raised too fast and without having thought them through. But let's do it next year in the larger context. Let's do it across all the companies, and don't impose a significant rate increase on Potomac Edison's customers now on what I have to, and I apologize, but I have to characterize as an ill thought out and flawed analysis sprung on us at the last moment by LPC.
Thank you. As I promised, other utilities will have an opportunity to respond to Ms. Shaw's recommendation. Do any other utilities, items 10 through 15, wish to respond? Seeing none, we'll continue with item 16 for the time being. Ms. Zeichner, Mr. Trout threw a lot your way. He stated that this proposal was out of the blue. The commission did find the proposal just and reasonable when it approved the proposal 13 years ago, but of course things change with time. You had your consultant, DHI Infrastructure, performed an analysis or provided this recommendation or some inputs into your recommendation today. Does the commission have a copy of the DHI Infrastructure analysis?
Mr. Chairman, the comments were drafted with the assistance of DH Infrastructure, and just to counter a bit Mr. Trout's point, due to the nature of the administrative meeting schedule, of course, we didn't have, significant amounts of time to work on this, but we did start consulting with DH Infrastructure as soon as this was filed, and the numbers themselves were several weeks in the making. What we did struggle with, as you can see by my statement, that we would need more time to determine which amortization method is just and reasonable. That was something that we needed more time with, which we concede. And this was our proposed solution because we just don't feel that Potomac Edison should charge its ratepayers another $1.4 million in 2023. And finally, I would just point out that this is something that's been going on for many years, so the amount of money at this point is significant. And I don't have Mr. Trout's figures. They have obviously had little time, understandably, so I can't counter those. And I also would need to consult with DH Infrastructure regarding the deferred taxes.
But this filing doesn't come out of the blue. It's made every year. Why did not OPC bring this to our attention last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
And Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. I know that we have done some significant evaluation recently, and this is what we've learned. I don't know if this was, I don't know what happened in previous years, honestly.
How do you respond to Mr. Trout's prediction that rates would increase by $10 million for Potomac Edison customers if the commission grants this request?
And I can't respond to that because I don't have the figures that Mr. Trout is using, and I haven't been able to look at that at all. But I will say that Mr. Trout puts forth a good point, and that is the fact that this is something that if the commission feels that additional consideration is needed, we understand that. And the option might be, as Mr. Trout said, to defer if that is a concern, because I don't know about that $10 million. There's no figures that I have today to look at that. Or also the commission could consider initiating a rulemaking to address this issue overall.
Has your office been working with Potomac Edison prior to sharing these comments on Monday?
No, Mr. Chairman. There was, of course, limited time and in working on this issue, and then with the deadline on Monday, we did not. I did reach out to Mr. Trout and staff regarding continuing this matter, but at that point we had filed our comments, and the reality is this is supposed to enter into effect on January 1st, so a continuance might not have helped.
Well, this filing, I suspect, will be made again next year. Mr. Trout will be here next year to defend, so you have a lot of time to work these issues out. Your recommendation is for the commission to adopt the amortization methodology that's currently used by the PHI companies. Is that correct?
That is our recommendation. If there is a concern about this $10 million described by Mr. Trout, I might suggest that a filing be made by Potomac Edison describing that, and then we would have time to evaluate that, but I can't speak to that right now, unfortunately.
I was concerned with one statement in your filing, and it's stated on page 5. It states, OPC must engage in additional analysis to determine the appropriate amortization approach for Potomac Edison. How could the office make a recommendation with that simple sentence stating that OPC must engage in additional analysis to determine the appropriate amortization approach for PE? Bottom, the penultimate paragraph on page 5, first sentence. Is the office not conceding in making that statement that the office is not prepared to recommend an approach to the commission at this time?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we actually chose the option that would give them the second highest level of earnings. So it's very possible that their methodology should be what Washington Gas is following, but that would give them the lowest level of earnings among all the utilities. But we didn't want to make that leap right now because we realized that would be a bit of a surprise to everyone. So we thought that right now Delmarva and Pepco's approach is appropriate and fair, and we thought that would be a good solution for now while this is considered additionally by the Commission and stakeholders.
That's an interesting statement that you just made, that OPC is not picking the lowest of the four options, but why are they picking the second lowest out of largesse for the utilities?
Mr. Chairman, we actually, there was considerable conversation about that among our office and our consultant, and we do think it's the best approach. So we didn't immediately jump to Washington Gas's approach. We thought that Pepco and Delmarva's approach was appropriate, and that's why we selected that. But we also know that it would not be a significant shock to Potomac Edison. But that's not the reason. The reason is we evaluated all of them, and we think that that was the best approach for Pepco and Delmarva. Additional analysis might reveal that they could go with a approach that would earn them less, but we have not performed that analysis yet.
Thank you, Ms. Eichner. And you just stated that additional analysis may warrant more information. Mr. Trout has done his back-of-the-math envelope stating that this could be a significant rate increase for customers. This has laid undisturbed for 13 years after the Commission has determined that this is a just and reasonable approach. As the Commission has announced that we are currently looking at the cost amortizations of all of our Empower Maryland utilities. Because of perhaps you may or may not agree, because of my lack of confidence, and perhaps the Office of People's Counsel's lack of confidence in acknowledging that additional analysis is required, in addition to all the information that Mr. Trout provided with today, I will listen to my colleagues' questioning, but I cannot support a change on the fly to adopt some other utilities method, and I still don't quite understand why Office of People's Counsel did not pick the lowest, but the second lowest. I'll turn to my colleagues. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Trout, let me start with you, if I may. I think in your comments you said next year we were going to address retiring all of the amortized balances. Did you mean to say unamortized, or did you mean to say amortized? Please clarify.
That's just me being stupid,
Okay.
Commissioner.
'Cause
Yeah,
you
I meant
almost-
unamortized.
Good, because you almost gave me a heart attack.
I'm sorry. No.
I think I said amortized as well.
Okay.
So I'm
No, it's the
stupid.
unamortized balances. We've been talking about that before you all and with you all for some time now.
Indeed. Indeed.
And I understand OPC's desire to achieve some level of uniformity in approach across the different utilities. I have not even had the opportunity to send a data request to OPC yet, asking them for the work papers behind their chart. So we've been dealing with this at a very high level. At a very high level, the question is, should Potomac Edison recover the principal on this quicker? And that's where the $10 million more comes from. And in recovering the principal quicker, we therefore collect less carrying costs on it, and that's where the $500,000 in savings. OPC says it's $1.4 million. Our math suggests it's less than $500,000, so that's a big difference, and I need to see the work papers. But at a 64,000 foot level, it's a very simple issue. Do we recover the money faster based on estimates, which is the approach the Commission expressly rejected 13 years ago, and collect more money up front quicker and save the carrying costs? That's the issue. And to me, That sounds like a subpart of the broader issue that this commission has been grappling with for some time now, which is what to do, how to retire the unamortized balance. And that's why you got the recommendation from me at the end that included the suggestion that this entire issue be taken up over a period of time where we can involve all the utilities, we can involve OPC's consultant, we can ask each other data requests, we can get it all out on the table and discuss it all, and then resolve it as part of the grand resolution that this commission is going to need to address sometime next year as to what happens beginning January 1 of 2024.
Okay, so I understood all that, and
I just was taking the chance to repeat it.
I understand. But okay, so I tend to agree with the chairman. I have a bit of discomfort in doing this kind of on the fly without a lot of time for it to be appropriately analyzed by the utility, by the commission, by others. So let me just ask you, though, if we were to take your recommendation of deferral, your item number one on your 3+ arguments, argument number one was, to my ear, and these are my words, not yours, but to my ear it was, it's what we've always been doing.
Yes, that's right.
But you wouldn't approach that deferral and those discussions and those negotiations starting out from, this is what we've always done and we want to continue to keep doing it, would you?
No, we will not, because the commission has made clear that January 1, 2024, it's a whole new ball game. And so we're going to have to look over, we're going to have to resolve, we've already made filings with respect to this, but we're going to have to resolve a whole raft of issues relating to the unamortized balance. And this, I believe, this issue appropriately belongs with that raft of other issues.
From the very earliest days, Mr. Trout, of my professional life, starting in the military, but to today, it's the way we've always done it. That's why I keep doing it that way, is something that doesn't ring well in my ears. So, I just my comment.
Yeah, no, I understand, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, and I have the same prejudice, quite frankly, albeit from a somewhat different background. The difference here is we're doing it this way because the commission expressly told us to do it this way, and they told us that after considering alternative approaches, and they made that determination on an entirely rational basis, which is you recover the costs based on actual.
Understood.
Yeah.
But that's a different argument than it's the result of a previous order 13 years ago. Okay, that's a different argument, but it's the way we've always done it is not the essence of the argument.
Correct.
They're two different things in my mind. So thank you for that. I'm going to have another question on all of these, Mr. Chairman, but I'll defer on items.
Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. This has been really helpful because when I read OPC's filing, I felt like, wow, how can we agree to charge the ratepayers more? But only seeing the analysis as was in the filing, not having a chance to talk to our staff or see any of the work papers. And now with Mr. Trout, we hear your arguments that, it's actually going to cost the ratepayers even more. So it's challenging, I think, to make a decision to make a choice at this point when we have kind of dueling analytical approaches without enough information to evaluate both of them at the same time and have our staff help. So, so I'm struggling with which direction to go. And I don't necessarily want to defer decision making, but at this point, I don't know how to pick one approach without having the chance to evaluate both of them similarly. So I don't have any questions. That was really just what I wanted to put out there.
Could I just make clear, my recommendation was to defer OPC's issue, not to defer making a decision today. With respect to what the commission should do today, I agree with staff. The commission should approve the tariff as filed by Potomac Edison, and then we'll deal with OPC's issues next year.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a high-level question for either for Mr. Trout or for our staff. Clearly, the Potomac Edison has a different amortization approach than Pepco Holdings. Could you just very briefly explain why?
Well, first of all, I don't know that that's true.
Okay.
I know that OPC asserts that it's true, but they assert that in an analysis where their conclusion is that customers would save $1.4 million when our analysis in carrying costs, when our analysis is that at most they would save something under $500,000. So I'm concerned about the validity of OPC's analysis, and but I don't want to reject it out of hand. That's why I suggested that OPC's request be denied without prejudice, and that we come back and we all look at this, and all the utilities be involved, and all the utilities get to speak to what it is they do and why. All I know for sure and certain is what we do and why we do it that way.
Okay, so you're suggesting then that you may use the same method for amortization as PHI. So in a sense, there wouldn't be, well, staff, is that your understanding as well?
I would defer to Mr. Hurley.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Dan Hurley on behalf of staff. They're not identical. So, when you look at some of the other utilities, they'll start amortizing their program costs the month after they're incurred as a forecast. So if they're spending $1,000 in January, they'll start taking 1/60th of those program costs in February, and that's how they amortize it down. So some of the other utilities include forecasted program costs that are amortized within their surcharge in a particular year. Potomac Edison does not include any program cost amortization in their first year. It's all carrying costs in the first year of a surcharge. And then, through the subsequent 5 to 6 years where the current program year's costs will be fully recovered, it's pretty close to being the same. It's not I don't think it's a major difference. Okay. So it's kind of some slight differences, but I wouldn't say they're major differences.
Would you suggest that the differences are significant enough to create the amount of charge that OPC is alleging could present?
I haven't seen the full details of that. We did do our own little back of the envelope or back of an Excel spreadsheet analysis just based off of Potomac Edison's projected costs in their residential programs for 2023. And, as discussed, based on the DPL methodology, the surcharge will be higher in 2023, but then it'll be lower because they're starting to amortize unamortized balances in this first year. So their amortization ends a little bit sooner.
Right.
And then with Potomac Edison's methodology, they don't start including any of the program costs until next January. So their surcharge for 2023, just based on this year only, or 2023 only, would be lower because they're only including carrying costs for the 2023 program year in 2023. But then their surcharge will get higher over subsequent years as their program, as the 2023 program costs begin to be amortized next year and for the next 60 months.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hurley, just to continue, so it's true then that the methodology that Potomac Edison has chosen does appear to actually accrue more in amortization than the other companies. Is that correct?
Yeah, if based on current years, the return on the unamortized balance for Potomac Edison will be slightly larger by the end of the full amortization period.
Oh, okay.
By based on this is back of about comparing those two methodologies for almost $20 million of costs. We're looking at over 6 years of about $846,000, but that's only these $20 million costs. I think Potomac Edison might have gone a little deeper they might have gone back a couple years to adjust how their surcharge would have been reflected. We started with 2023 looking forward.
Okay, and as far as your back of the envelope, if I'm reading everything correctly or hearing everything correctly, OPC believes that if we were to change their accrual, their amortization methodology, it would be a savings of $1.8 million for customers. And it sounds like the company agrees there to be about $500,000 in savings. Is that kind of where you land as well?
Again, not seeing their analysis, I can't state, but I know based on what we did, there is a little more return based on the amortized balance for the PE methodology compared to the DPR.
I mean, do you think those are the bounded ends? I mean,
I'd have to see that
so
analysis.
in other words,
I guess it
there
could
would be a,
I'd have to review their analyses to really give you a strong opinion on that.
okay, so you're not sure where the ends are, but you do agree that the Potomac Edison methodology is more costly to ratepayers than the other companies
Over time.
over time. Okay.
Right, 'cause-
As far as initiating this, a change, do you agree with the company that there could be a sudden $10 million increase in
I
the
haven't
coming
been
year?
able to make that analysis. I don't know about the magnitude of that change, but for 2023 on the residential sector, based on what we did, there's going to be about $1.8 million more dollars in the current year's in the 2023 surcharge, based on the OPC recommendation.
Okay. But there is a risk that could happen, though. Do you agree with the company that?
Yeah,
they're-
they're definitely, because they're going to be they'll start collecting program costs in the same year they're occurred, so that program cost will be higher. It's going to lower the unamortized balance. It will lower the return over time, but for this first year, the rates will be higher.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Can I just to OPC? So it sounds like there is a potential risk that if we were to make this change, I guess today, without all the information, that there could be this impact on customers. Do you agree that is something we should consider when we make our decision today?
And Commissioner Richard, I do think that's something important to consider. I don't have our consultant here available to answer to that, but I would say that generally we don't want to continue what may be a bad practice because we're worried about how to fix it, but I agree that we need to think of the correct way to fix it. So I understand what you're saying, and maybe additional analysis is needed, and we've always conceded that. And I'd like to clarify, and this is relevant to this point, I'd like to clarify my remark earlier as to why we chose Pepco and Delmarva's methodology. Pepco and Delmarva, and I received assistance from Ms. Bell. We discussed this extensively at the office, and she reminded me that part of the reason we chose Pepco and Delmarva's methodology is because they also approached this on a month-to-month basis versus yearly. So if we had chose Washington Gas Light's approach, it would have involved significant changes to Potomac Edison's calculations because they would have been looking at annual costs, annual versus monthly. So that is one thing. But I do see what you're saying, Commissioner Richard, and I don't think it would be inappropriate to evaluate this further. I think that would make sense.
Okay, well, thank you. And then as far as further evaluation, you mentioned that you believe we need to do this in a rulemaking. Given that this is really only impactful on Empower companies, is this something we could just do in the course of, I guess, any of our mid-course reviews or our semi-annual reviews? I mean, is this something that could just be done? Yeah, I know there's this big Delmarva case concern out there, but for this circumstance in Empower, could we just do this in one of our mid-year reviews?
I tend to think that it might be best to do this with a rulemaking. We did discuss that since the last meeting, and that would be our recommendation, that the commission consider initiating a rulemaking, but we could look into that further.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I do thank OPC for bringing this to our attention. In all the years I've been here, we've never really talked about amortization methodologies, so I think this is important, given that this whole overall issue is important as we approach 2024. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Richard. I agree with your last point there. I would also note that all three parties before us today have acknowledged that additional analysis is needed here. It appears commissioners don't have any additional questions on item 16, so we'll turn to items 10 through 15. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could someone from staff just go down the list here? from 10 through 16, from top to bottom, and give them monthly bill impact on the average residential customer of these tariff changes.
So for BGE's residential, it's $7.14 for the electric side.
And this may be a pop quiz question, so if the utilities wish to help out Ms. Shaw.
For the gas side, it's $2.41. For DPL, $7.28. For PE, $6.41. For Pepco, $8.50. For Smeco is $9.73. And for WGL, it's $2.15.
Thank you. I know they were in all the buck sheets, but I just needed to see them all together for comparative purposes. That's helpful to me. My concern is, and I'll express it again, we're raising various charges and rates all over the place at a time when there's excessive inflation and the economic pressures on, say, a retired worker who's on a fixed income starts to make some serious choices about what they have to do in their life to survive. Food, or gas, or medicine, or electric. I'm telling you, we better be cognizant of all of this stuff and not. I know we are, and I know we consider it, but it adds up. And I've known this for a long time. Talk a nickel here and a dime there, and pretty soon you're talking about lots of money. So that's why I wanted to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're in a dangerous time economically, especially for those who are on fixed and limited incomes.
Empower is not an inexpensive program, to be certain. It is cost effective for some customers and ratepayers, and it's not cost effective for many other citizens in our society. Seeing no additional questions, I would move that with respect to items number 10 and 11, that we accept the tariff revisions for filing effective with the respective companies' January 2023 billings. With respect to items number 12, 13, and 15, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing effective January 1st, 2023. With respect to item number 14, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of December 29th, 2022. And finally, with respect to item number 16, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of January 1st, 2023. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
I vote aye, but I do agree that further analysis should be done on the issues raised on item 16.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye. I agree also with Commissioner Bubar.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye, and I agree with Commissioner Bubar. This may not happen if we don't kind of order it to happen, so.
I suspect it'll happen.
Well.
Commissioner Richard.
Yeah, just to keep this going, to make it unanimous, we definitely need to address these amortization issues on 16, and if we can save some money for ratepayers and coming up with the best methodology possible, then we need to do it and do it quickly. So I vote aye.
I vote aye, and I agree with my colleagues. The motions are approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 17 consists of the annual STRIDE filings from Washington Gas Light Company.
Thank you. We'll allow parties who wish to depart at this time the opportunity to do so. The commission will take a brief recess. We will reconvene at 11:30 a.m. We are back on the record for the final item, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, item number 17 is the annual STRIDE filings of Washington Gas Light Company.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, and Annette Garofalo, again appearing on behalf of Commission staff. With me is Negusi Tesfaye of the Engineering Division, Jamie Smith of the Accounting Investigations Division, and Benjamin Baker and Evan Thomas of the Telecommunications, Gas, and Water Division. WGL has filed its proposed calendar year 2023 STRIDE 2 project list and STRIDE rider for 2023. By order number 88943, issued December 11th, 2018, the Commission approved WGL's second STRIDE plan. WGL's STRIDE 2 encompasses 5 distribution replacement programs and 5 transmission replacement programs, similar to the project types in WGL's STRIDE 1, with the exception of the addition of 1 new transmission program. The Commission authorized an annual 3% inflation rate, but no contingency factor for WGL's STRIDE 2. The project list and revised surcharges being considered in this filing represent the 5th year of WGL's STRIDE 2 and include project list changes authorized during the previous 4 years. WGL proposed a total of 258 projects in its calendar year 2023 project list for all programs with the exception of programs 4, 5B, and Transmission Program 1, for which no additional programs have been proposed. The total estimated cost of these projects is approximately $86.5 million, which includes the cost of carryover projects added to the list from calendar year 2022 STRIDE 2 project list. The company projects that the total STRIDE expenditures will hit the overall 5-year STRIDE plan cap of $350.67 million by the end of calendar year 2023. The company also stated that all calendar year 2023 expenditures over the cap, and that which is approximately $17.8 million, will be funded through normal replacement dollars and will not be funded by the STRIDE surcharge. Therefore, the company's proposed calendar year 2023 surcharge calculation includes approximately $68.7 million. As of June 30th, 2022, the company has retired 54.64 miles of main versus the 120 miles proposed by the company and approved by Commission Order 88943 to be completed by the end of calendar year 2023. It has remediated 11,668 services versus 18,429 services planned by the company to be completed by the end of calendar year 2023 and spent approximately $238.1 million versus the 5-year STRIDE plan cap of $350.67 million without contingency. In all STRIDE programs, staff recommends that WGL's project list be approved in this, which is the last year of its STRIDE 2 program. The 2023 STRIDE revenue requirement and surcharge rate do not include the calendar year 2022 STRIDE reconciliation factors, which will be filed by March 15, 2023. Staff has reviewed the revenue requirement calculations in WGL's 2023 STRIDE current factor filing and believes the calculations are accurate. However, we've also read OPC's comments, and staff supports OPC's request that total dollars recoverable for 2022 and 2023 be reduced. Staff proposes a reduction of 14.7%, the same reduction authorized by the Commission in March of 2023. That's all I have to say. Mr. Negusi, Mr. Smith and Mr. Baker and Mr. Thomas are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo. Before we turn to Mr. Sammartino, can you elaborate on this new addition to the recommendation that we continue the 14.7% reduction and why staff is staying with that same number?
Yes, Mr. Baker is going to respond to that question.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Baker.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Benjamin Baker on behalf of staff. So staff reviewed OPC's filing, and we agree with the premise, which is if we review the order from last year, the STRIDE plan that was put forward by Washington Gas last year, the Commission found did not comport with the plan that had been originally approved. So you put a haircut of 14% on it. And the plan that is proposed this year, or the project list, is substantially similar in terms of scope. So we agree with that, but we don't agree with cutting the STRIDE 3 or the project list for the last year completely out as proposed. So we would support 17%, 14%. We were okay continuing a haircut on the revenues that could come out, but we still want to see these projects get done. So therefore, we support the project list going forward. So we don't have a basis for that 14%. We haven't validated that versus the 17 that OPC has put forward this year. I would note, effectively, our proposal is symbolic in either situation because the surcharge is going to be above $2. And really the only time this would come into effect is if, one, in March there's a significant true-up, or two, the company has a rate case before they complete all their STRIDE work, and so therefore there would still be a STRIDE surcharge at the end of that case. In either of those situations, then our proposal would have actual mathematical meaning to the surcharge, but for all intents and purposes, our estimates right now would say it would still be above $2 even with our symbolic cut.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I suspect we'll hear about this symbolism from Mr. Sammartino. Mr. Sammartino, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Michael Sammartino on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. I want to say I appreciate staff's comments and their agreement that some sort of reduction to the surcharge is necessary, given Washington Gas's history of overpromising and under-delivering through its STRIDE program. That said, OPC maintains that denial of the project list and a further surcharge reduction is the most appropriate remedy. The proposed cost per mile of this project list is $4.674 million. That's nearly $2 million more than what the cost per mile for the company's project list proposed last year that this commission found unreasonable. And that's also significantly above the $1.75 million cost per mile for the company's overall approved STRIDE 2 plan. In short, with the surcharge set to increase regardless of the circumstance, with the surcharge set to increase, even with approving their project list and reducing it by about 14.7% or 17%, customers will be paying more money in 2023 for less work. In order number 90099, this commission took strong action regarding the company's inability to execute its STRIDE program that it committed to, and by putting forth a substantially similar list, the company failed to heed this commission's orders and proposed a list instead that doubles down on the flawed approach that this commission took issue with. The costs of this project list in relation to the surcharge are unreasonable, and denying the surcharge and imposing a 17% reduction, let me rephrase that, denying their project list and proposing an additional 17% reduction to the resulting surcharge brings the surcharge down below the cap and effectively would align the customer surcharge with the company's actual STRIDE performance. With that, I'd like to, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. I'd like to keep my remarks brief given our extensive comments.
Thank you, Mr. Sammartino. And we have an extensive history. This feels like Groundhog Day to some extent. Although you were not with us at the last round, Mr. Cleaver was in your place. Mr. Dodge, good morning to you and to Washington Gas.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. John Dodge appearing on behalf of the company. Thank you to staff for their comments and deep analysis on our 2023 proposed project list. Thank you, too, to OPC for their comments, which in my mind, bring into sharp relief a disconnect that persists in Washington Gas's Stride 2 program. That disconnect, if I may, merits a short historical reminder, which shows that Washington Gas has not overpromised or underdelivered. First, let's look at what expectation Washington Gas set back in 2018 when we filed our Stride 2 program. We proposed a certain scope of work which we estimated we could complete by investing $394 million. That proposed budget included contingencies, which varied between programs which totaled $44 million, or approximately 11% of our proposed budget. In late 2018, the Commission approved the proposed scope of work, but denied the contingencies. It turns out, Your Honor, we were right on contingencies. 4 historic events have taken place during our Stride 2 program that merit discussion here today. First, COVID-19. We've had trouble manning crews. We've had trouble pulling permits from state and local authorities who have shuttered their doors for weeks, if not months at a time. We've had trouble gaining access to our customers' properties to complete Stride work. We've had supply chain issues that we've reported to you in past filings. We've had paving issues, everybody's favorite topic, paving, as state and local authorities continue to look to us as a free source of paving in their communities. And we've had historic inflation in the last 2 years that has far outstripped the 3% adder that Ms. Garofalo identified earlier. As a wise man said earlier today, things change over time. In response to Order 8894-3, which approved our Stride 2 program, Washington Gas has filed project lists in 2020 and 2021 built to the Commission-approved budget. Fewer units, to be sure, but at the same per-unit rate. In March of 2022, as we know, OPC filed a complaint, and the Commission, as a result, discounted our 2022 surcharge. On November 1st, we filed our 22 project list, making very clear that that list, again, is built against the Commission-approved budget, which we understand is our obligation. We also make clear, if we hadn't before, that if we cannot complete the 22 project list with Stride dollars, that is the Stride surcharge, we will fund the difference with what we call betterment dollars, normal replacement dollars. Which brings me back to the disconnect. If OPC or the Commission is going to hold Washington Gas to the company's original proposed scope of work, as seems evident, we believe it only fair to measure our service achievement in Stride 2 against our original proposed budget. I'm not going to stand here and represent to you that if we had another $44 million since the beginning of 2019, we would automatically hit our original scope of work. But given the performance metrics I'm going to share in a moment, I think it's clear we would be very close, or at least considerably closer, to our original scope of work. On the fly, my subject matter experts here with me today, for example, have calculated probably an additional 10 to 12 miles of main. Things change over time. Let me turn now to those performance metrics. As an update on our 22 project list, as of the end of November, the company has retired 97% of the main projected, 88% of the services, and 80% of Program 5. That's meter buildups, risers, and gauge line projects. The company has closed 18 of 19 projects on the transmission project list and expects to carry over one into 2023 because of some permitting issues. Overall, our cost variance is 7% for 2022. Let me give you an update on the plan as a whole through the end of 2021. We've retired 95% of the main, 88% of the services, and 83% of Program 5 projects. We've closed 34 of 37, or 92%, of our transmission list. The overall total cost of service variance for Stride 2 from 2019 to 2021, measured against the Commission-approved budget, 8%. Here's the most important statistics that I'm going to share with you today. Stride is working. The primary purpose of Stride is to reduce the incidence of leaks from leak-prone pipe. Since 2019, we've seen leak reductions in the following categories. Main leaks have declined by 25%. Service leaks have declined by 19%. Total leaks have declined by 21%. Corrosion leaks down by 47%. Pipe, weld, or joints declined by 25%. We're managing a good program, and it's working. You have a choice before you today, because OPC has proposed an even larger discount to our project list, from 14.7 to 17%. It's about a $2 million haircut. Interestingly, if the commission had approved our original budget, our 22 revenue requirement would have been approximately $3.5 million greater than we proposed, meaning we would still be in the black, even using OPC's analysis. I'd like to correct one other assertion that OPC has made since the beginning of Stride. We're not falling behind. Stride is an incremental program. We're not as far ahead as we had hoped to be, but we're not falling behind, as the data that I've shared points out. Finally, I got to retreat to my legal beagle job. OPC has pointed to no legal infirmity under the Stride statute for our 2022 project list, including the estimated unit costs. The statute doesn't say anything about rejecting a project list based on prior project list achievements. I think that our performance metrics, our understanding of our obligations to heed the Commission's approved budget show that we have acted in good faith, and our performance metrics show that we've done a terrific job to date in Stride 2. I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. We'll start with the project list. In Order 999, we approved the project list for calendar year 2022, although the Commission imposed that 14.7% discount. I recall extensive discussions between you and Commissioner Herman at the time at the January 12th administrative meeting, where your position was that without a project list in place, you have no authorization from this Commission to work on Stride projects. Is that your position?
It remains so, yes.
You stated that WGL is, a moment ago, that is not falling behind with respect to completion. Is that with completion of the entirety of the 5-year Stride 2 plan?
Both on an annual and plan basis, that's correct.
An annual and plan basis.
So you can pick out any of the years, and we are definitely behind the original scope of work that we proposed because we haven't had the funding through Commission-approved budget. It's just that simple.
Your forecasting abilities, I will concede, have improved, particularly last year in 2022, although you still have approximately 248 projects remaining on the list, including 96 of these carryover projects. Can you realistically get these 248 projects done by December 31st of next year, when Stride 2 comes to an end?
I'm going to use the famed trick of looking for a nod or a shake of a head, Your Honor. The answer is yes. If I may have a
Yes, yeah.
My colleague, Mr. Akis, points out, Your Honor, that we have 96 carryovers that are pipe complete, so the dollars to be expended and the work to be done there is paving and restoration only. So of the 248 you mentioned, 96 of those have gas flowing through new pipe.
Your company, however, is confident that the remainder of those projects can realistically be completed by the end of this Stride program?
Yes, sir.
Based on the track record and the fact that we have had some pretty serious events over the past 5 years, my confidence is not at 100% that the balance of these 248 projects will be completed in this time. How do you respond to Ms. Garofalo's counter proposal that the discount should be consistent, remain the same at 14.7 as opposed to 17%? Because we do have that symbolism issue, for lack of a better term, that Mr. Baker raised, that at some point the cap is the cap and any discount won't necessarily bite into the surcharge any longer.
I think it's an interesting point. I haven't had a chance to consult with my client. We are concerned about the symbolism because symbolism can easily turn into precedent. And here we just don't think we merit a discount on the surcharge at all. We're working to a commission-approved budget. We've got great performance metrics. We think we deserve 100% recovery. Now, again, for all dollars above the residential cap, we will recover those dollars in the next rate case that we file. And to forestall a question, I don't know when that will be.
Thank you. But if by the end of this 5-year cycle, the customers only get 83% of the value, I think as Mr. Sammartino would argue, should they be paying 100% of the cost? Or should there be, do you concede that there should be some discount, or is your position that there be absolutely no discount?
I believe under the statute and traditional rules of rate making, we are entitled to 100% of our prudently incurred costs. And that's the same thing I shared with Commissioner Herman during our last colloquy.
You'll ultimately recover any incurred costs that you may not recover in stride, would you not, in your next rate case?
I certainly hope that the Commission would agree that we have incurred those costs prudently and reasonably. In fact, I'm reminded that as a result of our most recent base rate case, case 9651, the Commission actually defended its order on appeal when OPC challenged 9 stride projects and said that there were inappropriate costs interwoven through those, and the Commission agreed with us that the cost changes were not foreseeable and that we should recover those costs. So based on recent precedent, I'm optimistic we would.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. I'll turn to my colleagues and hear their questions of you and the parties. I do tend to agree that the Commission should approve the project list, however reasonable or unrealistic as it may be in terms of completion. But before I turn over the mic, was it your understanding, and if you need to confer again, that's fine, was it your understanding that all 100% of the carryover projects, all 96 of them, are either operational or near operational at this point?
I'll triple check. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was quick. Yes.
Okay, 100% of the 96 projects. Yes. What was the term you used?
They are pipe complete.
Pipe complete. Okay.
So pipe complete means that new gas is flowing through the new pipe. BCA closed means that all the trailing costs and receivables have been finalized in our system.
Thank you. Let me just one more question with my colleagues' indulgence. Mr. Sammartino, staff advocates that we keep the discount at 14.7. What is the office's position?
Your Honor, we believe that 14.7% is not, for this year, is not the most accurate reflection of the company's underperformance. Assuming that Washington Gas does complete 100% of the work that it planned to do for 2022, overall it'll be about 83% short, or 17% short of where it said it would be, and what the Commission approved for their Stride 2 plan. So we think that a 17% reduction is the 17% factor is the more accurate reflection of the company's underperformance.
And can I turn back to Mr. Baker? If 17% is if 83% of the projects will be complete, is Mr. Sammartino's 17% figure more accurate than yours?
So staff isn't going to make any. I can't make any We did not do our own math to validate if it should be 17 or 14 in this instance, because we were thinking about this in about a day and a half. We just pulled what was there beforehand in terms of this is what you did last time, carry it forward. If this is the same calculation that OPC used last year and was accepted by the commission, then I don't see an issue with that. It's at the end of the day, we're really discussing forward recovery of cost here. So how much do you want to let Washington Gas recover ahead of time is the real question here. If it's determined to be prudent in a rate case, all of this will come back. Oh, they will be able to recover their actual cost. And so 17 or 14% at this point, as we were pointing out, really the only way to get down below $2 until there's a rate case or unless there's a significant true up in March is frankly a denial of the whole project list, which staff doesn't support at this time. So either works.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. My colleagues, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
interpose. My apologies. My colleague, Mr. Lawson, does our calculations, surcharge calculations. Would like to respond to a point that Mr. Baker made, if he may.
Good morning, Andrew Lawson, Manager of Regulatory Affairs. Just wanted to, I believe, a correction to one thing Mr. Baker said. It's not recovery ahead of time. It is recovery simultaneous with costs incurred. And there is no, to the extent you deny cost recovery for this year, there is no makeup of that in future periods. $2 million denied this year is gone. There's a revenue requirement on plant each year. It won't go into a bucket for us to collect later. So just wanted to clear that part up.
I suspect Mr. Baker was referencing accelerated recovery, not advanced recovery, but I'll let him
Yeah,
speak.
I mean, I was discussing the idea that we're allowing these dollars to be recovered sooner than we would. Normally, you'd have to wait to a rate case to bring this in for recovery from ratepayers.
And that's fair, but I don't want anyone to leave with the misconception that dollars expended and not included for recovery are recovered later. They're not. So our revenue requirement uncapped this year is $20 million. With the cap, we can recover 16. That $4 million will not be recovered ever. Never.
I'll try to clarify.
We'll hear from Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith.
It will not.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Jamie Smith on behalf of staff. So I think what Mr. Larson's trying to say is, so when you look at rate base, there's depreciation associated with that plant. So depreciation would be depreciated the life of the asset. So if you don't cover for a rate case for 2 years, let's say, that depreciation would be lost. And I think that's what it's trying to say. So they won't recover all their costs, but any remaining unamortized amount, or undepreciated amount, would be included in rate base when it comes in.
Yeah.
So majority would still be in rates going forward.
That's right, but the $4 million difference will not be recovered. It's 100%, and I know Commissioner Donnelly don't agree with me, but it is true. We can demonstrate that. I mean, there is no it would require a regulatory asset on the books to go and be amortized in the next case for us to recover it.
So there would be no depreciation to put on your books. Is that correct?
Well, there's depreciation that is incurred each month, right? I incur a percentage of the original asset each month, and then the carrying costs on the unamortized balance. And there's also property taxes and those types of inputs into the surcharge. There's just no bucket that we hold on to it and roll it in. You can only recover the costs that will have happened in that rate effective period in the case. I know it's confusing.
You've lost me, Mr. You mentioned property taxes a moment ago. All incurred costs that the commission deems prudent are recoverable. I think you would agree with that.
That's correct.
Okay. So perhaps you could restate for me and.
So for each piece of plant if I put $1 million of plant into service in a year, let's say the depreciation on that is 2%, and the return on the undepreciated balance is, let's just say 7. So there's $7,000 of return I need to collect for that year. and then there's $2,000 of depreciation. We'll leave the other pieces out of it for simplicity. So I need to collect $9,000 that year, and to the extent that I do not collect that, it just goes into my overall return actually achieved. There is no separate bucket. I put that in, and then we bring that into the next case.
So you're saying there's no way to account for that, absent a regulatory asset to include in your next base rate?
There is, but I do not believe that the commission would permit us to do that. That's not, you've never allowed us to do anything like that.
Okay, I don't recall this case fact pattern being brought before the commission, but thank you, Mr. Lawson. I'll turn to my colleagues for additional questions, starting with Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that. Mr. Dodge, I'd like to speak to you if I might. No, not up here at the microphone.
My altar boy training kicked in there, Your Honor. Sorry about that.
Would you agree that it's the obligation of a monopoly utility as part of their franchise to operate that monopoly utility under Maryland's regulatory construct to provide safe and reliable service at a reasonable cost?
Absolutely.
Can we start there and agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. So whether or not there's a stride or not a stride, which is simply a recovery mechanism,
Yes.
it's not a prudency review, it's not an authorization, it's none of that stuff. You have an obligation as a monopoly utility to fix leaks, to fix unsafe pipes, to fix plant that's outdated and may cause a problem. Is that not correct?
100% agree.
And you would normally recover that in a base rate case, that work, that
As an
expense.
attractor or regulatory asset or.
And you don't put that into a regulatory asset necessarily, you just bring it in the next base rate case.
That's correct.
Okay, so the notion that there has to be a regulatory asset or you're never going to see that money is not true. You will see that money. It's just a matter of when you'll see it.
No, sir. I think the distinction that Mr. Lawson was raising is that because we have a surcharge mechanism in place, any dollars we do not collect through the surcharge, we can't track them. They don't automatically go into
I find that to be untrue, and we've had many cases in here with gas utilities where they say, well, we'll just recover it, anything above and beyond the $2 cap, we'll recover it elsewhere. We'll recover it in base rates. And we have a long history of acknowledging that, and we have a long history of gas utilities doing that, and I don't get where WGL maintains this notion that it's lost forever. So it boggles my mind to hear it, because it's, in my experience, and I've only been here 6 years, I haven't seen that happen. In fact, I've seen just the opposite happen.
Well, I know in our case that we have moved stride rate base into regular rate base almost contemporaneously with the end of our stride programs, so we haven't had to worry about this issue. But at your invitation, I'm happy to supply something in writing to further clarify our position on this.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to make an invitation. It feels like a trap. So, to be honest with you, and I'm not joking. Let me direct your attention to page 9 of the buck sheet, if I might.
If I have OPC's comments, but I'll have to grab the buck sheet if I may. My public thanks to Mr. Sammartino. And I'm sorry, the page again? Your
Page
Honor?
9.
I'm there.
So it talks about remediation of low-pressure distribution pipes. We've had this discussion somewhat before. I'm glad to see that at least this year there's some mention of it. But the low-pressure main that's being replaced is about 0.4 of a mile, 0.4 miles, out of 13.82 miles. It's less than 3% of your entire program. Why so little?
Again, as I've explained in the past, and I'd like an opportunity to follow up with a future part of my answer, we group low-pressure facilities into the same bucket that is analyzed by our risk modeling tool. We don't break it out because it's low pressure, medium pressure, high pressure. They're all analyzed the same under Optimane, which has been our modeling tool. And low pressure, simply because it's low pressure, does not stick out as more risky, relatively risky, than other categorizations of similar piping. So, as just an example, if we have a cast iron or bare steel low pressure line, that doesn't pop out of our model simply because it's low pressure. We look at the material itself, not the pressure on the material.
Yeah, but, I fail to understand, you referenced leaks extensively. So many leaks were great, we fixed all these leaks. But part of your leaks are due to water intrusion into low pressure systems, are they not?
That is correct.
Isn't that one of the flaws of low pressure systems? And when you get water intrusion, you get erosion and corrosion more faster, and yet WGL seems to be resistant almost to a stubbornness to replace any of this stuff. And I fail to see why, because if you were to talk about the risk assessment to the folks in Amherst or North Amherst or up in Massachusetts, where a person lost their life and they blew up 80-some buildings because of this low pressure system, they would have maybe a different view of the risk of this stuff, as do I.
We've had this debate before, and I always appreciate your question on it. I'd like to answer it very briefly, and then move to the forward part of my answer that I promised earlier. First, the Optimane modeling system takes into account both risk, which is no different based on low, medium, high. We key off the facility itself, versus consequence. You're focused rightly on consequence. Our Optimane model weights that in spitting out our project list every year, in risk ranking the tens of thousands of pipe segments that we can address. It does take into account the consequence that you're bringing up. So we're not being stubborn, we're following the science. Now, that having been said, I promise you the forward part of my answer. Earlier this year, Urbint, URBINT, which is the company that developed and supports Optimane, announced that it's no longer going to support it. So we've already anticipated that. We're moving ahead in finding another model to risk rank our pipe segments. In all likelihood, the replacement that we will use is more probabilistic. And I'm going to get over my skis very quickly here. No promises, but my initial understanding is that the consequence issue you raise will be weighted differently under the probabilistic model that we are migrating to. So, again, we'll follow the science, but as soon as our STRIDE 3 filing, you may see a different approach from Washington Gas on low pressure. Not because of your excellent questions every time I appear before you, but because we're changing in some manner the risk ranking model that we are using.
Hope springs eternal, Mr. Dodge, but that can't happen soon enough, in my opinion. And you're actually replacing low pressure main with low pressure main, and you're replacing low pressure services with low pressure services. That blows my mind. The biggest gas utility in this state takes a very different approach to this stuff, a very different approach. And they're the oldest gas utility in this state. And I fail to see why it hasn't already happened, but there will be a treasure trove of YouTube videos year after year after year should we have a big accident. So, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell, I happened to watch the YouTube meeting from January 12th, and I think the colloquy between you and Mr. Dodge almost identical, word for word, on this low pressure for low pressure replacement. I wasn't kidding when I said this feels like Groundhog Day. Other colleagues, Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. I think I have a question for Mr. Dodge, then maybe one for the staff. Can you just clarify with your metrics discussion, at the end of 2023, what percentage of the STRIDE program will be completed?
I can, but I'd like a chance to confer and maybe even bring up one of our subject matter experts, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you.
Our staff has been standing for such a long time. If anybody wishes to sit on your side, please do.
We're still checking. I can report that 100% of transmission projects will be complete by the 2023 deadline, and we're checking now on the myriad of distribution projects.
Okay, all right. Is it all right if I ask the staff a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So just want to clarify my understanding. If the project list is not approved, what's the impact of that? I mean, the projects will still get done. It's just really how the costs are recovered. And I just want to understand the basis for your recommendation or disagreement with OPC's recommendation that we not approve the project list.
I think that without a project list, there can be no surcharge, and so the projects could be done. They would be paid for in a different manner. They would be paid for in the way the excess projects that were talked about by WGL are paid for. I would like to say that there is one issue here, and we don't really know exactly what's been completed until, let's say February or March of next year, because the books have to be closed. And there are a lot of things. So we're going by a list that's incomplete, but we do support the list for next year, the last year of Stride 2.
Did you want to add anything, Mr. Baker?
I think the only other thing to add is that the company has no obligation to do these it's their business decision to do these projects, and so the Stride is arguably an incentive to do them. If they choose to not, if we deny the project list, they can still, if they believe there's a business risk, it's their obligation to do these projects if there is for some reason. But there is no, they decide what projects they do and where. So Stride is kind of an incentive to say do this grouping. But if we don't have Stride, it's at their discretion what they do and don't do, and that's also at their risk what they do and don't do. But yeah, so that's, I guess, a distinction there. So the Stride list is kind of a carrot in a sense.
Okay.
I'm going to turn you back over to Mr. Sammartino in a moment. As measured against the 5-year plan, Your Honor, the answer is for distribution, we estimate 70%. As measured against the commission-approved project list for each of the 5 years, 100% completion.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bubar, if I may, I'd like to add a bit of a clarification to Ms. Garofalo's point about the surcharge.
Okay.
OPC's understanding that if this project list were to be denied, the company still has work that it's already completed through Stride that would still be subject to the surcharge. So the surcharge would continue on. It just wouldn't include, the revenue requirement wouldn't be based on the work that they're proposing to complete for 2023.
Right, okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Perhaps, Ms. Garofalo, sorry, Commissioner Richard. Last year, staff had an alternative argument in recognition that the utility was completing less work at a higher cost. And if I recall correctly, it was to limit the company's cost recovery surcharge based on a per unit cost, presumably mileage. Do you recall that alternative proposal from staff at the time?
I do not. Someone here with me may recall it, and I know that you've watched the YouTube videos, so it's probably fresh in your mind.
I watched it on double or triple speed, so everybody was speaking very quickly because we had actually this item carried over through several administrative meetings. January 12th was just one of many. Perhaps, Mr. Dodge, do you recall staff's recommendation it was more of a pro rata approach where we would limit the surcharge to the projects that were actually completed?
I'm afraid I can't go beyond your general recollection. My apologies.
Thank you. I'll turn to Commissioner Richard.
Mr. Baker.
Oh, Mr. Baker.
Yeah, so last year we were, our end goal of that, I guess the ultimate goal of that was to say, let's just set the surcharge based off of what the trends that we saw Washington Gas actually completing based off their original budget. I think, I mean, I have to go back and look at it in exact words, but I think it was just attempting to get to another way of possibly limiting how you recover dollars at the same, before you get to a rate case, basically. It was a different way of looking at a cap. I don't know how, we'd have to go back and do the math and probably get some data from Washington Gas to be able to tell you what that would look like this year.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Baker, I just wanted to ask just a couple of questions about your recommendation. At this point, I think I'm persuaded by OPC that we need to not only have the surcharge reduction, but for it to have any meaning, have any impact on the surcharge, we would need to reduce the revenue requirement that goes into the calculation for 2023. The only way we do that is by cutting the list. So I'd just like to understand from staff, what is the import of just having a symbolic reduction if it really does not have any impact? I mean, at the end of the day, this is intended to be a reward and incentive to the company for engaging in an accelerated program at a set, budget, and that is to be a benefit for their customers. If they haven't achieved that, then why would they still be entitled to that incentive?
So staff's recommendation, so I think we were trying to balance a couple things. We would like to see this work done. And so the stride, the fifth year stride list, we didn't want to see axed. Once again, they could still choose to do this work. There's nothing that stops them from doing it if we remove stride. But that's part of where we ended up here. And so then also we were looking at last year's decision put forward by the commission, which basically was effectively saying, okay, we don't think what you've currently proposed meets what we originally agreed to 4 years ago. So now we're entering into year 5, and arguably what was put forward is in the same position as what was put forward last year. The main difference is that we now have a year's worth of spend that has occurred that is now, or you have year 22 and now you're compounding that with year 23. And so the point of that stride surcharge is to allow for the recovery outside of the rate case of some of the cost. And so really the issue is you would have to make substantial cuts to what you would allow as forward recovery if your goal is to not allow the company to get a full forward recovery. So I think staff was looking at it from a perspective of, we don't have a basis for saying they've done the work in 2022 that they said, or we are projecting that they're going to do a amount of the work. I don't know how much, but they're going to do a substantial amount of that work, and we would also assume they would do a substantial amount of the Project 3 list. And so just not letting them have the dollars didn't really ring well with me, at least, if I think about saying, well, I want them to get the work done, but I want them to do under stride, and I'm allowing forward recovery under stride. But if I want to tell them to do it but not give them the money, that there wasn't really a basis to say just cut it all out.
And I understand that. We all want the important work to get done, and I think the company is committed. They've said that they are going to ensure that their system is safe, and that they acknowledge, I think, to questioning here, that they will do what they are required to do by law, by their franchise, to keep it safe. But just going back to last year, the recommendation is that we make that cut in the surcharge, and it actually had a impact on their forward ability to collect.
Right.
Okay, so I just trying to understand, reconcile that argument for last year. Okay, and now this year, you still want to have this symbolic, but it won't have that impact on their forward ability to collect. What's different about this year's failures as opposed to last year's failures?
I don't think there is a difference, so I think that's why, or I don't think there's a substantial enough difference to deviate then from the cut that was used last year. So I think that's the problem we're running
But it actually did have a material cut in their surcharge.
Correct.
This year it would not, unless we actually.
We would so we'd have to effectively completely, even if we approve the list to get the surcharge under $2, we would effectively have to remove the entire spend of the year 5 project.
Yeah, and what goes into the calculation for that surcharge.
Correct. And
it doesn't mean that the list goes away. It doesn't mean the company still is obligated to do some of those projects if they continue to deem them essential for safety.
Correct. And so basically you would, if you don't give them any of that revenue, you've effectively denied the list at that point, which is not as far as we went last year. So I think we could do that. That's definitely an option that we could take, but that's a different tack than we took last year based off of what I'm viewing as similar numbers.
No,
So-
and I understand it's different, but it's the only way, would you agree, that would have the same impact on the surcharge? If we, I mean, again, just a percentage cut in the surcharge is meaningless just this year because there's a $2 cap, okay? But, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just
I
trying to
think-
figure out, last year, it seemed to be staff's recommendation that we have a meaningful cut in the surcharge, which it did. This year, I mean, if we follow OPC, they will still get $1.76 in surcharge. But if we just follow your recommendation, they're going to get $2 no matter what.
Right, and I think I'm trying to think. I think it's substantially though is a full denial. I think to get to the below $2, you're denying the list at that point. So you're going a step further. I get we're trying to send it sounds like you want to send a message with the surcharge, and I don't know how to cap that surcharge below $2 without denying significantly more.
And I'm understanding what you're saying. I guess I'm just trying to get at how we get to the same result this year as we did last year.
Right, and you would have to do something
And-
similar to what
so-
OPC is recommending today to
Okay.
get to a similar monetary view of the world. I think it's just an issue of you're effectively at that point taking a much bigger haircut off the company's projected work to pull it off, and that's, I think, where we didn't want to go as far, at least in this
Or
recommendation.
potentially just not getting the incentive for which Stride was
Right.
created in the first place. They will still have the regular, opportunity at a rate case to get recovery and a return on those projects. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just turn to OPC. These are Stride projects. They're Stride enable, whatever the word. They're Stride projects. They're important. Okay. Does OPC have any concern that the company might not move forward with these important projects if we were to just outright deny the list? I mean, I think this commission has been very supportive of the state policy and the state mandate from the legislature that we support the companies in their Stride projects. So what is your response to that? Because I do have concerns about just wholesale denying a list.
Thank you for the question, Your Honor. So I think OPC is looking at denial from based on the text of the Stride law. Stride work, not only does it have to address the leaks and aging infrastructure issues, as Commissioner O'Donnell pointed out earlier today. But in addition to that, the costs and the investments that the company is accruing and the company is making have to be reasonable. So regardless of whether the commission approves or denies this project list, the company still has a continuing obligation to make the investments that it deems essential in its infrastructure to ensure safe and reliable service. The company is also, as we've seen in other proceedings, the company is, has taken positions regarding its greenhouse gas impact as well. And I know there's a bit of a nexus between greenhouse gas emissions and methane leakage. So to the extent it's important for the company to continue to replace these leaks and come to this commission and point out its progress and success in doing that, regardless of whether Stride, the company receives accelerated recovery from Stride, they can still make those investments. And I'd like also to point out to Mr. Dodge's point earlier about this commission's authority to deny the project list in the manner that OPC is requesting. Section 4-210J of the Public Utilities article allows this commission to reduce future rates, abates, or surcharges, or alter or rescind a Stride plan if an investment or project or cost of a project no longer meet the requirements of Section 410E3. And in last year's proceeding, this commission found that the project list that the company put forth, based on the amount of the surcharge that it proposed to charge customers, which was, I believe, around $1.90, this commission found that surcharge, in the context of that project list, was unreasonable. OPC is making the same argument that we did last year. The surcharge that customers will be paying, which will be $2, in the context of this project list that the company is putting forth, is unreasonable. And for customers to see any impact, then denial of this project list and a further surcharge reduction is the most appropriate remedy.
Right, thank you. And I would agree. I think that the company does need to do all the projects that are necessary to maintain the safety of the system. But at this point, I don't believe that they've earned this year's reward from the STRIDE. And I would point out that under the OPC proposal, that they would still be collecting $1.76 in STRIDE surcharge this year. So for that reason, I will be supporting the OPC position. I don't know what the motion is going to be, but I will be supporting their motion, or their proposal.
Commissioner Linden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I had a couple questions for Mr. Dodge. Good morning, or good afternoon. One of my first year as a commissioner, we had some of these same questions about the company's completion rate for STRIDE projects. And I remember having a couple of questions for you regarding the manner in which the company tracked its projects versus how it's being compared to some of the other utilities. And I recalled at the time that WGL's process was different, and it ended up resulting in your projects appearing to not be complete, even though if you were reporting it the same way the other companies were, they would show as complete. And you made a couple of comments at the beginning of our discussion, our review of your proceeding today, that made me think that maybe you were still filing it the same way. So I just wanted to be clear that you weren't. So let me ask the question, and then maybe that'll help get me to where I want to be clear. You said earlier that you had, I believe it was 96 projects that were pipe complete.
Yes.
And by pipe complete, you meant that gas was flowing, but paving hadn't been done. Maybe there was some paperwork, contracts, some customers hadn't been paid, etc. If today the company had to make a filing with the commission, updating us on the number of STRIDE projects that you had completed, how would you report the pipe complete projects to us, as complete or incomplete?
If I may have one moment, I want to clarify with my SME, and then I think I have the answer, but I just want to clarify.
Gentlemen, you could get out of your seats and approach Mr. Dodge so he doesn't have to keep going back to you.
Most exercise I've had in 6 months.
I'll note for the record, Mr. Chairman, this is the same huddle that happened 5 years ago when I asked this question.
Go to the tape, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience, Commissioner Linton. The answer is that of the 155 distribution projects proposed for 2022, 153 are pipe complete.
And so my question was, how would you, in that particular case, using that data, if the filing was due today to the commission to tell the commission how many projects you've completed, would you report those projects as complete or incomplete?
There would be two metrics that we would report in this hypothetical report. The first would be pipe complete. All but 2 are pipe complete. And now I've got to turn again to my colleagues to see how many would be BCA closed, if I may.
Well, while they're...
So the answer is 75 BCA closed.
All right, so you lost me a little bit there. So 75 are BCA closed. Now, so just that we're talking the same language, then BCA closed would mean paved road, or if it's on
All invoices
soft
paid.
soil and its soil is covered, customers are happy, everything is taken care of.
Correct.
But for a pipe complete, those are projects which you still have work to do at the property, but customers down pipe from that area are receiving gas.
Correct.
So, all right, so just hold on for a second, then I'll turn to the staff. Can you tell me if the other gas companies have what appears to be 3 different categories of completion for projects?
They do not report them to us that way, but I will tell you that Mr. Dodge and I have had some conversations about problems with the counties in which WGL operates and the amount of work that they have to do to actually close a pipe, which sometimes I think exceeds the amount of work that was done in the STRIDE program. My personal suggestion, I was acting on my own authority, no one else's, but was that they report these things both ways so that we could see how many pipes were in the queue, how many were done in the sense of WGL's done their work, but how many, and then the remainder would be we need to do some work that the county has or is going to direct us to do, but we haven't done that yet.
And so, thank you for that, Ms. Garofalo. So the issue that when we're talking about the STRIDE program, it's obviously the intention here isn't just to incent the companies to make the system safe by replacing old pipe, but that's pretty much the extent of it. So from my perspective, once we know that the pipe has been replaced, the gas is flowing through safely. There's especially in a commercialized area where there's a lot of hard top, like what we have in the WGL service territory in Maryland. You have other county-related issues that can impede they count as the final completion of the project. And my concern that I raised the first year that I was a commissioner, that I kind of still have a concern now, is that there becomes a legacy of the data. So the data we're looking at from 5 years ago doesn't track the fact that these kind of complications are still there. And so we point to it and we say, oh, look, they failed, they didn't reach a goal from so many years ago. But we don't take into account the fact that they're reporting it a little differently from the other companies by referencing it as pipe complete versus, what was it, BCA or something?
BCA closed.
BCA closed versus, and I recall when I asked this question 5 years ago, and I haven't watched the YouTube video, so I don't know exactly when, but I recall having the same conversation, and I recall BGE saying that they did not report it the same way. And so their approach was different. And so they were both completing projects, but it wasn't being reported the same way. So I've always had a little concern about saying that the company is not completing the projects. Obviously, I share my colleagues' concern that we want these projects completed as quickly as possible, and obviously we want the system to be safe, and I think the company, staff, OPC, everybody else shares that concern, as long as it's done so in a prudent way. But I guess I just wanted to make sure I had some clarity about how the data is being collected and is being reported by the company. It sounds like it's still not apples to apples, and there might even be some, in terms of looking backwards, to just even determine if the completion rates have been meeting the goals the company set. I mean, there's part of me that wonders if the numbers we're looking at are really reflecting what actually happened on the ground. But there's no way for us to go back and unwind that at this point.
If I may respond, Your Honor, the pipe complete metric essentially flags for the commission that the pipe investment has become used and useful. And I recall Chairman Stanek actually lauding us, but saying, you know, you've done better in making sure that there's more new used and useful pipe in operation during Stride 2 than Stride 1, and that's accurate. So the derivation of the pipe complete is to tie to the traditional utility concept that the pipe is in the ground, it's being used, it's useful for our customers. BCA close captures the entirety of the project, the business case authorization, the entire life cycle has been completed.
Okay, well, I guess we're towards the end of another Stride program now, but in the future, you may want to consult with the staff to make sure that the reports that you're filing are reporting accurately as to what's happening on the street. So as we look back on it over months and even years, we're able to see exactly what happened. We're not just seeing a number that that may not necessarily reflect that the pipe was safe, and the gas was flowing, but you didn't pave the road yet. So I mean, obviously nobody likes driving over those big metal gates, but or plates rather. But that's really not that's part of what Stride is supposed to do, but not the primary goal. So I just like to make sure that if we're really going to start, for lack of a better word, penalizing, that we're doing so on the data that is accurate. I mean, unfortunately, like I said, we had this conversation before, and I was hoping that consultation with staff would have already happened, so we could say, okay, we know this data is accurate and these are the true results, but we have to work with what we got. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Linton. Mr. Dodge, gentleman from WGL, you've heard a lot of frustration coming from my colleagues, I think rather articulate. We've had concerns from 2018-19 when we approved Stride 2. We recognize that there's been some intervening events, some within the control of the utility and some not within the control of the utility. That frustration should not lead us to necessarily punish the utility, but there are times when that may be appropriate in terms of penalties. I do believe that a significant discount factor is appropriate in this case. I disagree with Office of People's Counsel that rejection of the list is appropriate. We've had this discussion earlier this year. What happens if the Stride list is rejected? These are important projects. They need to get done. Mr. Dodge, I have your commitment that the outstanding 248 projects will all get done on time and unfortunately over budget by December 31st of 2023 when Stride 2 concludes. For those reasons, I'm going to propose a motion as recommended by Commission staff. And I would move that we approve the company's calendar year 2023 Stride 2 project list and approve the company's proposed surcharges along with the continuation of a 14.7% discount for filing to be effective January 1st, 2023. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
I will vote no, and again, it's not so much a penalty. I see it as a withholding of a reward for not meeting, I think, the goals of Stride. So for that reason, I vote no.
Thank you. I vote aye. The motion, based on a vote of 4-1, is approved. On behalf of the Commission, we wish you happy holidays and a successful 2023. We are adjourned.